explorations in the bling that make audiophile records better. Or not. That's my working title here. This is a little bit of a stream of consciousness. I'm going to show you some new and recent releases, not all brand new, but of the past year, that are considered audiophile. Jazz and rock and soul and funk and the double 45 phenomena, the super vinyls, the clarity vinyls. Give one man's take. Now, ultimately, if you like the music, that's all that matters. If you like the way a record sounds, it doesn't really matter. But we have labels left and right, and artists and mastering engineers and producers telling us that this kind of vinyl sounds better and it should be put together in this massive box that adds to the price, adds to the cost, adds to you paying your money. Now, you might like that. You might like a shelf of library-style legal law books adoring your walls, and that is fine. It's up to you. And again, this is a stream of consciousness video from me talking about this music, and all these records, I'd say, except for 4, I purchased myself. I did get some promos, but I'm going to give you my personal take on it, talk about the music, obviously, and how I see these. And I will say this up front. I will be inconsistent here. Like, I might give you my take, my personal feelings about this, and then 5 minutes later be inconsistent when I show you something. But that's the way it is. That's the way it is with me. I'm open to changing my mind on things on a case-by-case basis. If I like a record pressed on a certain formula and I love it and it's quiet, so be it. I'm going to start with a couple of sort of independent jazz records, and there's a bunch of jazz stuff in here, which is nice. Some kind of caught me off guard, and I'm late to them, but I want to start out with Jacob Wendt's Silver Street. This is pretty much a self-production, self-produced by a drummer who's out of Los Angeles, California, I think originally from the Santa Rosa, Northern California area. I was on a live stream with him recently, and what a great guy. I didn't know him. He composed all the shots here, and he did this very much like the Tone Poet veins. In fact, hype sticker and all. And this is Silver Street, is the name of the album by Jacob Wendt. And it's pressed at RTI, one of the great pressing plants in the world in Southern California. It is produced by Paul Taverner at Big City Recording. I was not familiar with him. Kevin Gray, Cohearent, cut it. That's why it emulates everything, the sound, the clarity on this record. And Stoughton type of covers with a beautiful heavy stock. Now, I couldn't find this in my local once I heard about it, and I found out it's being distributed by the In-Groove, Michael at the In-Groove. I paid for this. It's not a promo. So he distributes it to different stores, but you can go to Phoenix. In fact, a couple of these records, go to Mike at the In-Groove. Tell him Mazzy sent you. You're not going to get a deal, but support independent local record stores and releases like this. This is a friggin' great bop, post-bop record, I guess. Jazz, very accessible, not out there, and it is. It's got balls, and it comes storming in with the opening track here, called Silver Street. Now it's got drums and compositions that Jacob Wendt created. It's got a trumpet, tenor sax, piano, and bass. The main food groups of a jazz quintet. This has balls, this record. I mean, it's mostly upbeat for the most part. I think there's 1 or 2 tracks. I can't remember if it's Gin and Platonic. I love that name of it, right? Gin and Platonic. I'm a gin guy, so I love that. But highly recommended. Just a good sound, well-pressed record. This is like a $40 or so, I think, record. So it's right in that pocket. And in this video, I'm going to talk about that because price does make a difference. Now, to some people, $40 is a lot. But for an audiophile record with this type of style, heavy cover, well recorded. Now, this was recorded digitally, and all the other components, components were analog. And I would have guessed when I heard this for the first time that it was an analog recording. It's just that good. So those of you who are all poo-poo and say, why bother having it a record and not a CD when it's recorded digitally? There is a difference. I can hear it. These are my opinions and my take on this. And of course, things are going to change. But highly recommended. The other record, which I really love, that you can get through the In-Groove as well. Just happens to be the distributor is Hackensack West, Anthony Wilson. And Anthony Wilson, this is produced by Joe Harley, and this is Kevin Gray's second record on Cohearent, his label, where kind of jokingly Hackensack West is sort of the Rudy Van Gelder opposite. He's in Southern California, and he turned his living room into a studio and is going to do more things like this. This is a stunning record. The sound on this as well. Guitar, stand-up bass, drums, and piano. There you go. Beautiful, beautiful recording. The second so far of Cohearent. Ironically, Kevin just mentioned on that recent podcast he was on, it sounds like one of his upcoming records, he's going to do a record with Jacob here. So, they both like great sound, great. But again, it's the music first, the sound second. But when you can marry them together in such a wonderful way, he does the gatefold as well, and just highly recommended. Again, right in that pocket, that price point. I believe it's around $40 also, which the Tone Poets are. And that'll bring me to a couple things after this. But wonderful records. And I love when you can do this. You don't need that extra bling to add the special vinyl formulas, to add some special wide packaging just to kind of jack your price up. That probably, in fact, I will say this, my opinion is it doesn't make the record sound any better. Now, if you want a wall of those larger packages for your law library record wall, all the power to you. That's your thing. But when that's the only option, I think it's personally a little disingenuous. Now, yes, you can go find originals, but we'll get into that in a little bit. The two latest Tone Poets. I don't get all the Tone Poets, but I get quite a few. And I probably have maybe 75%, 80% of the Tone Poets. But two that just came out. One is Freedom Sound, the Jazz Crusaders. Of course, I was immersed in them on the business side of it and the sales side of it in the late 1970s when I worked for ABC from 77 to 79. And then MCA for a little bit, because the Crusaders, as they were known at that point, were very kind of soulful, funky, commercial, and sold a lot of records for ABC Records. But I hadn't heard this. This is where Tone Poets and Blue Note owns these labels, including Pacific Jazz. They've done a series of these type of records. This is really a great sounding record. This is from 1961. Of course, Joe Harley and Kevin Gray are a part of this. The obligatory, beautiful Stoughton jackets. In this case, they're not gatefolds. I kind of like these. The only reason they add the gatefolds are to get those great Francis Wolff covers on the gatefold. But, I'm one that may say if you don't need it as a gatefold, do you really need to make it as a gatefold? And I understand, Blue Note owns the Francis Wolff archive now that Michael Cascuna used to own, and I like seeing those images inside. So all the power. We're still like in the $40 range, just under $40. And this is an excellent record, really great sounding. I mean, I found very few records. In fact, I don't think there's any Tone Poet record I've been disappointed with in terms of the sound-wise. But again, it's the music first. And if you just think it's going to be that funky, soulful stuff from the 70s, the late 60s into the 70s of the Jazz Crusaders or the Crusaders, it's different. But it is very accessible. Next from Tone Poet from 1968 is Andrew Hill, one of my favorite piano players. I'm all in on Andrew Hill, and I really love that first album. I think it's the first album within the first groupings of Tone Poets that went out, Black Fire by Andrew Hill. Love that record. But this is a 1968 session, and this is with Booker Ervin, Andrew Hill, of course, on piano, Lee Morgan on trumpet, Ron Carter on bass, and Freddie Waits on drums. And the opening track, Grassroots, there's a bass solo. It's a really moody, beautiful piece, and it's got this wonderful bass solo by Ron Carter that is just stunning. And I love his bass on this. Again, he does this great acoustic sound. I was fortunate enough back in the late 80s, early 90s to be at a photo shoot that Michelle Clement did. was doing all the stuff for Tony Williams for Blue Note at that point. And I was at the studio when she did some portraits from Ron Carter. And there's some pictures, I wish I had access to them now, of the close-up of his fingers on the bass. And I've seen him perform over the years, but I didn't realize, or I didn't pay attention until that I saw those photographs, the close-ups, how long his fingers are, and the beautiful sound he gets on this record. I just love this record. Andrew Hill, Grassroots. It doesn't really get into that soul thing. So for 1968, I mean, obviously, this is a perfect picture for the moment of Grassroots and what's happening in America. And I believe all the songs here were composed by Andrew Hill. A fantastic record. 2 wonderful records from Tone Poet this month of January 2025. Next are the 2 new upcoming records, and I did get these sent to me from Rhino, from the new Rhino Reserve series. And I did a video presenting this series about a month ago, and I just got sent these, and these are really good. Now, I used to have Southern Nights by Alan Toussaint, and during my purge of 95, I got rid of it, unfortunately. I have the CD. When I thought CDs were going to be better, but these are excellent. Now, the DNA on these, okay, these are, what, $32 about, and they're all analog cuts. This case are cut by Chris Bellman at Bernie Grunman. I think they're going to be cut by Matt Luthens in the future through Kansas and through Cohearent, depending on it. But this is a great soulful record. And some of these songs, if you don't know this record, you might know Southern Nights, and you might know What You Want the Girl to Do. I think Boz Scaggs covered that. Various people have covered his songs, and what a great producer on his own. Obviously, the meters are on here, and it's just a wonderful kind of New Orleans soulful vibe. Great piano player, great arranger, great composer, and his vocals are great on this. There's a little bit of a neo-psych thing and phase shifting on some of it, but let me just show you. This has their new hype sticker right there, the Rhino Reserves, and on the hype is the barcode, so there's no barcode on the actual cover art, which is kind of nice. These now, this is where the whole idea of extra bling comes in. When you can have a record company do these things, $32, no frills, just really great, all analog cut. These are pressed at Fidelity Record Pressing, and that is the fairly new plant, the last maybe less than 2 years now, that Mobile Fidelity owns. And every record I've got some Mofis, I've gotten these, they're doing an excellent job. Quiet, flat, no special vinyl needed, no special bling, no excess packaging. They do have their custom labels. Some people have a little bit of a conniption about not the original labels, but I kind of like this Rhino Reserve label. It's kind of this retro thing. I think it's really well done. All analog records, perfectly flat, poly sleeves. Now the cover stock is a little lighter than maybe I would like. I want it to be like those crafts. It's slightly lighter. It's basically like a regular record. You know, I like that extra bling in that case that Kraft does, or the single tone poets there. But for the price, you can't beat it. Now, a lot of people might say $32 is still more than they want to pay. Find a used copy, okay? Find this record. I'm sure you could find a used copy, $20 under maybe, but this is excellent. I don't have it to compare, so I can't give you that. The next record is Eddie Hazel. He's a guitar player for Parliament Funkadelic. This is a funky, psychedelic, really a cool record. Instrumental with some vocals throughout it. It is called Games, Dames, and Guitar Things, guitar player for Parliament Funkadelic. And this is a wonderful record. I think this was, I was corrected in my last video. This has been reissued the last couple of years, but now the Rhino Hi-Fi, this wonderful Chris Bellman cut is excellent again. Same thing, pressed at the Fidelity pressing. So you want good pressings, you want quiet, flat. They did it on these. I didn't hear a pop on these. Eddie Hazel excellent record. There's a great version of I Want You, She's So Heavy, the Beatles song, and California Dreamin' by the Mamas and Papas, the John Phillips song, and Michelle Phillips. Just love it. This is going to be a really interesting label to follow. It looks like they're going to do them, I don't know, every 2 months or so. But Rhino Reserve, and I give, again, kudos to Fidelity Record Pressing Plant. They're doing an excellent job. But the bling, as I said in the top of this hour, do we need the bling? And these are 2 Mobile Fidelity records I've got in the last few months. And these are pressed at the new Fidelity plant as well. Perfect pressings, quiet pressings. I was blown away by this one. This is one of my all-time favorite records. I have many copies. Now, if you find a clean stereo, great. I would say the original gives this a run. I would say the original stereo is the best copy I've ever heard if it's clean, but this is very close. This is stupendous. Now, if you ever see a mono of this, it's extremely rare. Paul Simon didn't even want to reissue them in mono. I have a copy, and I don't think it's any better. I like the stereo for this album. This is my favorite Simon & Garfunkel record, Bookends. DSD step, so that's why when I said what's ever in the mix, I don't care if it sounds good. This is an excellent record, and this is from a dub tape, I believe. That's why it says Sound Lab instead of original master recording like that. But I would have known if you didn't tell me and if you didn't have this separate masthead there. These Mofis that are coming out now, these regular Mofis at $60, use this super vinyl. And the super vinyl has this kind of, you can see through it, kind of this bluish transparency. It's excellent. It's very quiet. Now, that's the extra bling. Is it necessary? I personally don't think so. Those Rhino high fidelity records are quiet as hell. They're not any noisier than this. These aren't any more quiet than those. So this is something you're going to pay $60 for these records. If we didn't use this super vinyl, would they cost $40? Right? That's something to think about. Is this extra bling necessary? And then there's original master recording, a Mofi of Berlin, that Lou Reed follow-up, kind of more of an artsy project after Transformer, after Walk on the Wild Side became a surprising hit. I love this record. Now, this sounds excellent, but is it necessary to be a Mofi on super vinyl? I'm not quite sure. I don't think you need to use this vinyl formula. And when people diss, going back to the early 70s, RCA, that this came out, the original on this was on Dynaflex. And some people like to mock the Dynaflex. The Dynaflex was great vinyl, and it was so thin because it was during the oil crisis, but it was excellent vinyl. It wasn't recycled with pieces of labels stuck in there. And so anybody who knocks the Dynaflex records, they're way off base from my point of view. So that you get to that point. Do you need these extra things? Marketing as a super vinyl, charging $20 more than it should be. Don't know about that. Don't think that is that extra bling is necessary. Those of you who watch me for the last several years know of my distaste for the extra packaging and the extra box sets. Now, right off the top here, I'm going to say this. People like to point out that, Mazzy, but you're inconsistent. You bought that George Harrison Uber box. You bought that Mind Game Cube. The difference, from my point of view, is those records aren't about sonics as much as they are a combination of the record as a celebration of an anniversary time to put those records out, and the packaging, the artistic creation of that, making it something beyond a normal release. Absolutely nobody needs the Uber box or the Mind Games Cube unless you're a massive Beatle and or art collector. It's not about the music there. And as much as I pontificate about It's the Music Stupid, that is something else. So there is another notch for me being inconsistent there. But when you putting out a record and you want the best sound and you want as many people to buy it and listen to it in the best possible transfer, in the best possible mastering, in the best possible pressing, you go in a different direction. And I want to show this. This is Bill Evans' Trio, and this is a favorite record of mine, Explorations by Bill Evans. Now, this is the Craft single batch. We all know that there's been a lot of controversy lately because of Kevin Gray's comment about the single batch process. Most records are 3 steps. These are 1 steps, essentially. I'm not going to get into the description there. Go read somewhere else. I'm not going to argue for or against the single batch system on a technical side, like a scientific side. That's for you to judge what you like on your system. Now, again, I think it comes down to the tapes and the mastering and how the record is presented. Now, of all the box set styles for single records, to me, this is the least offensive. The profile is slim. It's got a ribbon to pull the record out. It's got the obligatory 4-page tape box, essays, details of the recording, and the beautiful Stoughton-like, we're using that. I don't know if this is Stoughton, but that heavy cover stock, to me, that there's nothing better in records. This is it. This is, to me, for me, in terms of reissues, the perfect visual and textural expression of a record reissue. If they're all like this, I would gladly pay an extra $5 for these type of covers. Like going back to those Rhino Reserves, I kind of wish they had this cover. I would gladly pay, $2, $3 extra, whatever it costs for this type of cover. But that's okay. Most people don't really care. The aesthetics and the textural side, the feeling of it, excites me. Now, I'm torn about these small batch series. I used to joke about them at their single origin, single batch, like, single origin coffee beans and things like that, which I'm a fan of. I like the idea of small batch, of doing a limited edition. I don't know how many of these they do now. Let's see. These are numbered. I have number 1589. Are they 2,000, 3,000? I know they've adjusted their, over the years, their quantities on these. And some of them I like. They did Eastern Sounds, Yusef Lateef, which is excellent sounding. A couple others, the Monk one, I think it was the Monk one. Was it the Monk? One of them I wasn't too thrilled with. And I got this and I played this, and this is really good. But I have an asterisk here. I have the big double 45 box. Now, this is the second pressing out of 3. They're on the 3rd one now. I did not buy this. I did not get it free. My friend Coffee Dave had this, and he had it sealed in his house for about 5 years. And he never played it, and he has stuff everywhere. And I was at his house once. I said, how come what is that? Is that the Bill Evans? I really wanted one of these before they went on press for number 3. And we ended up doing a trade. So I got a trade. Now, these are double 45s. These are 22 LPs, 11 albums. These are excellent. But as I said before, and I wanted to talk about it here, I am not a fan of double 45. So to me, the extra bling in here is making something double 45. My guess is that's all that Chad Kassem and QRP and Analog Productions could get licensing-wise. I'm sure the label wanted to hold on to their 33s themselves. So we got the double 45 of Explorations. These were mastered some years ago by Steve Hoffman and Kevin Gray, and these are excellent. I'm not a fan of 45 RPMs, and whenever I have the chance to play the records that I have 33s, I pull those. So I wouldn't have bought this today. This is a $900 box today. It's still available, but I don't think I've heard these records sound as good. Now, that's where the compromise comes in. 45s are basically just louder. Yes, you could talk about dynamics. Again, I don't want to get into that. And I think the main thing that I will agree with from my point of view, some long records, you start getting a little distortion towards the center label, towards the dead wax. I don't have a lot of problems with that. I don't notice things as much. But that's something that people will tell you that was one of their biggest arguments for splitting it up on a double 45. I don't like the concept of breaking up the flow of music and the sequentialness of consistency of playing a record from beginning to end, one side, turn it over, playing the other side. So, as much as I love this, I'll go to this. Now, when I went back after I played this double 45 is better than this. This is actually really good. It could be a little fuller. I think the bass is nice and the mid-range are nice. And I didn't miss anything on this record when I played it. I really enjoyed it until I put this on. But here is the dilemma again. We talked about dilemmas and extra bling, right? I am a fan of craft records. Waltz for Debbie, Village Vanguard, and Everybody Digs. And this was, I guess, the mono one that came out on a record store day some while ago. These are excellent sounding. I prefer these craft records, which are excellent and still available for, I think, $40, under $40, maybe less. I don't know. These are available, and I play these more than I play this double 45 box, and I don't hear a huge difference. Sure, might hear a slight louder sound here. You turn these up, you crank them, and they sound beautiful. This is the sweet spot. I wish Kraft, and I've said this before, if Kraft had put all these out, if Kraft had done their version of this double 45 box and 33 of all the Bill Evans records, I would have bought that in an instant. Do we need this version with this? Now, this uses a one-step process. I don't believe I hear the difference from the one-step process over the excellent recordings and mastering and pressings and cuts that Kraft does with these. I'm not a fan of these one-step processes, these single origins, these small batches, these double 45 records, all these extra packaging that adds bling to make it supposedly a better record, a better sounding record for you. I don't hear it. You may on your gear. Remember, it's your ears, your gear, your room, all those things. And if you do, I'm not going to, say you're wrong about that. All the power to you. But to me, it's not necessary to have something cost, in excess of $100 because you did a one-step process over a three-step and you put a lovely box. But musically, Kraft brilliantly, beautifully does it with these records. This is how I look forward to reissues like this. These are brilliant. You don't watch Mazzy's video for consistency, but you do get my opinion, which shifts. The Great Weave, as they call it. This is my all-time favorite jazz album. Something Else, Cannonball Adderley with Miles Davis and Hank Jones, Sam Jones, and Art Blakey. Love this record. Now, this is the Mofi one-step that came out a couple years ago. I had to grab it because it's my favorite record. But this is the one-step process, which I don't think is necessary. This is their super vinyl, and this is double 45 RPM. So it's got all these things that I hate, but the music is wonderful. Now, I have the Music Matters Jazz. That's my go-to record, the 33 of that. I have the classic that came out last year or the year before, which is excellent. I have several versions of this. I think I have a early pressing as well. This sounds really good, but do I reach for it with a double 45 and breaking up the mood? I hardly do. This is where I have something, because it's a collector item, gold embossed box set. But I will say something, and I'm not going to take credit for it, but maybe I will, just for the hell of it. I like that all these companies have reduced the thickness of their box set. Remember what these were like? Now, the thing I don't like about Mofi Fidelity, they don't have the original cover. You have an inside of the cover here. You have an extra slick. So you have, look at this. Basically, they like tape a CD on the front. You have the instructions here. Obviously, this is from a DSD step, but double 45, kind of a waste, really, but great music. So I'm gonna I love the music, all right? There you go. But then you got, on the other side of it, these. I bought this because when I worked at ABC, this was the first record I promoted, Asia. Great sounding record. Now, I think this sounds excellent. Unfortunately, the same time this came out, was it Universal, I guess, put out a 33, which I didn't get. I have the original good pressing. I forgot the matrix number that I have from my ABC days. And it's as good as this, or very close. And if you weren't comparing it, you really wouldn't miss what you hear on here. This is excellent. Chad Kassem, Analog Productions, did a fantastic job. But again, it's double 45, and it's, in this case, you know, it's got all this extra bling and clarity vinyl, which is unnecessary. It's pretty quiet, but it's not as quiet as those Rhino Reserves even. That's not even on super vinyl. It's not, but it's an excellent sounding record. So if you want one of the best sounding records, this is the one to go. But at that point, does it matter? Does it have to be that much better when you're just enjoying the music? And but maybe for some of you it is, and all the power to you. At least in this case, it's a 33 RPM, but then it's still in the same size box. This extra bling, is this necessary? Now, these UHQRs are not the one-step process. I think when they first started making these, they used the handmade pressing plant, and they were having issues. They couldn't get them out fast enough, or the quality wasn't there, so they switched. So, excellent job on these. But look, that would be enough. The extra bling, do you need to pay $100 more or $80 more for this when you can get this? And unfortunately, the labels themselves, except for like Tone Poet, except for now with Rhino, with some of their issues, they're not doing these all analog audiophile nice covered things. They're doing the mass market things, but they're still selling those records for $25 to $30. So it seems like just for, you know, eke it out. For $32, you could get pretty much everything you want. The labels could do that. I'm going to end with the favorite record on my turntable right now, and that is the debut album by Boz Scaggs, self-titled. He was in the Steve Miller Band for the first two albums, The Children of the Future and Sailor, and he went with Jan Wenner, who was the publisher of Rolling Stone. They were neighbors in San Francisco, and they went to Muscle Shoals. And you got the great rhythm section of Muscle Shoals on here. You got Roger Hawkins, Barry Beckett, and David Hood. And then you have the addition of Dwayne Almond, who came back, who worked on all of these records in Muscle Shoals, the soul records. This is a wonderful recording. Now, I've been, hot and cold thinking about this series. This is the Atlantic 75 series that QRP, Analog Production, Chad Kassem has done in association with Atlantic Records. And this is the double 45 series. Now, when they first announced it, you could subscribe to the whole series and get the same number, or you could buy individual copies as they came out or pre-order them. This is the only one I pre-ordered, and I got number 843. This is the only album I wanted. Now, earlier on in this video, I talked about I really dislike double 45s. But being such a favorite album of mine, I was very curious, so I pre-ordered this. I hear great things from other people about the Genesis and the Yes, but to me, prog is the worst genre to cut up over four sides, from my opinion. I mean, the whole concept of prog and progressive, that type of music, telling stories concept is not breaking it up, not breaking up the mood, not breaking up the rhythm, but people are loving those records. And who am I to tell them they shouldn't? Of course I'm not. But I didn't go there. This is the only one song-based record. This has a blue-eyed, soulful, country, funky rock and roll vibe, and it's an amazing record. Didn't sell much when it came out on Atlantic Records in 1969. The signature piece, which was an afterthought when they had more time in the studio, like basically a day or a half a day to kill, they recorded Loan Me a Dime, which actually wasn't written by Boz Scaggs. He's credited here from the original, but he got the lyrics. It's a cover blues song there. And this is an excellent record. And I give kudos to the QRP people, Chad and Analog Productions, for the sound of this. Now, I played my original. This has the edge. This has that a little more fullness. Part of it is the time when this came out in 69. Again, a lot of labels and mastering engineers and producers would compromise because of the gear. This is really good. The other side of the coin is, why couldn't Atlantic, they held on to their 33 versions, do everything with all the ingredients here, right? And make it a 33. I would have bought that in an instant, and I probably would have subscribed or at least bought more of these titles. But the 33 is the sweet spot for me. That's the artist intent, if you will. The 45s, the breakup of the mood. Now, in this case, it's not as bad as those prog records because of the song-based thing, but it sounds excellent. Has the same gatefold, has the same, let's see, description of the Atlantic 45s. You have, oh, they're selling me Steely Dan. Naked picture of Dwayne Almond. This is an excellent record. Yes, you can find this for 10, 15 bucks. Get it. If you don't have this record, get it. He does a great version of the Jimmy Rogers, the singing lineman, Waiting for a Train. Sweet Release, I'm Easy, I'll Be Long Gone. This is a perfect album. I love Boz Scaggs. I did a whole video on his work. He became more funky, more blue-eyed soul, more slick with Silk Degrees, with the band that would be Toto backing up. And as much as I like that stuff, this is it. This is the one. I wish he stayed more rootsy. But, you know, later on, when he did independent and more smaller label type things, after the massive disco dance craze of Silk Degrees, I like Slow Dancer a lot too, produced by Johnny Bristol. This is the one. But he has done some recent blues things over the last 20 years, which are excellent too. But this is the one. This is the vibe. And Chad on this did an excellent job. When I compare it again, this is the advantage. But if I didn't have this, I would be totally satisfied with that original edition on Atlantic Records. So this is the whole inconsistency where with rock and roll and music, there should be no rules. I don't have rules. When I say I don't like Clarity vinyl, I don't like the boxes, doesn't mean you have to agree with me. And most of you don't. A lot of you do. And apparently, not just because of me, but the boxes seem to have shrunk, I don't think the price went down much. Maybe they did a little bit. I don't know. But $60 for a double record. Now, a 33 would have been 40 bucks. To me, that's what it should be. That is a little dissertation or a little random access memory, free flow discussion of the extra bling that makes these things cost more than they need to cost. Even the Rhino Hi-Fi, which I bought half, I've gotten some free. Those have those beautiful gatefolds, $40. Okay, that is the sweet spot in terms of audiophilia, not in terms of basic records. Okay, I know people want to pay 20, 25 bucks for a new record, and you still can for a lot of artists, but for that extra step they go through, I think the $40 price point for some of these is the sweet spot. And the other label I didn't show, because I don't have anything recent by them, but that's Intervention. And they've done a lot of great things for A&M Records. They did Gene Clark Records, they did Flying Burrito Brothers, and some really, really wonderful music. The Stout and Gatefolds, the same thing, $40, 33 and a third. That's the thing. But again, with licensing comes into play here. It seems like the labels usually want to hold on to the 33s themselves. But I wish more labels would jump into this. I mean, Columbia seems to not want to do it unless they go through Mofi and they do the DSD step, which I have no problem with. But Universal doesn't do a lot of these with a lot of their labels. You think they would do a line, and as far as I know, they don't. But that's it. Just a lot of stuff to ponder, a lot of pontificating, a lot of bullshit audiophile mumble jumble probably. But thanks for listening if you held out this long. Mazzy loves you.